Hello friends, this is Dr. Rohit from Rohit Productions. Thank you for watching my videos and subscribing to my channel. This is another video on company law. In this video, we'll be talking more about the venture capital, the mutual funds and the debentures. First of all, let me tell you something. If you're unmarried, if you're married with kids, if you are a married couple, and if you are middle-aged or a person who is above 50, so what are you going to do with your money? How much should be your investment? Are you looking for short-term investment, long-term investment? What would be the ideal thing for you to invest? It basically depends on your age and your plans. So let's talk about mutual funds. Before talking about mutual funds, I had left a few topics about debentures and a few topics which I want to cover, which will never be covered for you. If you are looking for something special, I'll give you venture capital and equity bonds, which I have never spoken about. So in this video, we'll be talking about venture capital and equity warrants and bonds also. So let's start with our video. Before starting with our video, what are we going to learn in this video? Mutual funds, debentures, and venture capital. Debentures are secured, unsecured, registered, unregistered, further perpetual, convertible, and redeemable. So let's talk about, when we're talking about mutual funds, so they are sponsor, AMC, Asset Management Company, and trustee, two subdivisions. Then Asset Management Company will again be divided into two, R&D agent, and this one is custodian. So we'll look after every aspect of the mutual funds in this video, and hopefully I'll take another video for mutual funds where I'll be covering the detailed aspects of the mutual funds. So when you're talking about venture capital, what are we going to talk about? Equity bonds, floating rate bonds, zero coupon bonds, deep discounts, secured premium. These are going to be the things which we are going to cover in this video. So before starting with this video, let's start with debentures. So in our previous video where we spoke about the share capital and the debentures, we spoke more about the share capital, and we got to know a lot about the primary market, the secondary market, and the equity shares, further the preference shares, the voting rights, and how the surplus profit is being given in cases of preference shares, redeemed and non-redeemed. Everything we got in about shares. So now in this video, I'll be talking a little bit about debentures. So let's first talk about what are the kinds of debentures. When we're talking about the kinds of debentures, as I've shown you in the whiteboard, that we have registered, unregistered, secured, convertible, perpetual, and further we have redeemable debentures. So let's talk about them. Debentures may be of following kinds. I have to be word specific, so that's the reason I'm reading on my notes. So just take care of what I'm telling you. These are the debentures for the registered debentures. These are the debentures which are payable to the registered holder. A registered holder is one whose name appears both on the debenture certificate and the company's register of debentures required to be maintained. So on the company's register and also on the debenture certificate, the name should be given. So this is the registered debenture, where the debenture will be holding its name on the company's register of debentures and also on the debenture certificate. Second thing is about bearer or unregistered debenture. So for this, what we are going to talk about, these are the debentures which are payable to bearer. These are regarded as negotiable instruments and are transferable by delivery, and bona fide transfer for value is not affected by the defect in the title of the prior holder. So this can be transferred by delivery or a bona fide transfer. For value is not affected by the defect in the title of the prior holder. So this will not affect the title of the previous holder. So these are unregistered debentures which can be transferred. And these are which are payable to the bearer. These are payable to the bearer. Then we come on with the next part, which is secured debentures. Debentures which create some charge on the property of the company are known as secured debentures. So debentures which are creating some charge on the company are known as secured debentures. Next point is unsecured or naked debentures. Debentures which do not have any charge on the assets of the company are known as unsecured debentures. So secured debentures have a charge on the company, unsecured debentures do not have a charge on the company. Next thing is convertible debentures. The debentures gives an option to the holders to convert them into preference or ordinary shares at stated rates of exchange after a certain period. So these debentures give an option to the holder that they can be converted into preference shares or ordinary equity shares at stated rates of exchange. At a stated rate of exchange, we can exchange them for equity, for getting equity shares or for getting preference shares. And after a certain period, so that's after a defined period, I can convert these debentures into preference shares or equity shares. Redeemable debentures, debentures which are issued on the condition that they shall be redeemed after a certain period. Such debentures are known as redeemable debentures. So debentures are usually issued on condition that they shall be redeemed after a certain period. So after a certain period, if I can redeem, like I have a coupon, I can redeem the coupon next month. So this is a coupon of around say it's a 1 lakh rupee coupon. So I want to redeem that 1 lakh rupee coupon. I have a coupon, and I can redeem it any time after this month. So on the month of May, suppose from the 1st of the May, I can redeem it. So I can take back the money. So that's it. Next thing is perpetuable debentures. When debentures are irredeemable, they are called perpetuable debentures. So when I cannot redeem them, they can continue. So I have a coupon. I have to continue with that coupon. I cannot redeem it on the 1st May. I'll get a coupon next month, and after that I'll get a coupon next month. So I'll keep on perpetual. I'll keep on increasing the rate of the on the coupon, the amount on the coupon. So this is perpetual debentures. So now when we are talking, we are just finished with debentures. We now move on with the next topic where we're talking about the equity warrants. When you're talking about the equity warrants, let's talk about the equity warrants. The holders of the warrants are entitled to purchase the equity shares at specified price during the specified period, technically referred to as excise period. So holders of these warrants are entitled to purchase the equity shares. So I am a holder of this warrant. I can purchase the equity shares, ordinary shares, at a specified price, at a price which is determined during the specified period. So during this first 3 months, during the first 6 months, I can go and purchase the ordinary shares. So that is the holder of this warrant are entitled to purchase equity shares. However, the holder of equity warrants has a right, but not the obligations to purchase equity shares. I have a right. I can go and I can purchase, but it is not an obligation to purchase. I have a right. I can go if I want. I can go and purchase this, purchase the equity shares or the ordinary shares. But it is not mandatory that I should go and I should purchase. Naturally, the holder of the equity warrant will exercise the option to buy the equity shares if the prevailing market price of the equity shares is more than the specified price during the exercise period. So I will exercise the option to buy the equity shares if the prevailing market price of the shares is more than the specified price during the excess period. So during the excess period, whatever period has been given to me. Okay. So if that during that period I am getting a price which is less, and when I am buying the other prevailing market price is more, so I'll naturally buy during the excess period. The equity warrants are generally issued along with some other instruments with the intention to make issue of that other instrument more attractive. When we are talking about equity warrants, they can either be detachable and or non-detachable. So when detachable equity warrants can be detached from the underlying instruments and can be traded independently. Non-detachable equity warrants can be detached from the underlying instrument. So what are the advantages of equity warrants? The issuing company gets benefited with the help of equity warrants, particularly when the requirements of the funds of the company is staggered over a period of time. The company can decide the exercise period taking into consideration its requirement of funds. So I have a company and I need to have some funds. So what will I do? I'll give an exercise period, I'll give a locking period, and in that period, equity warrant, I'll issue equity warrant for the people who are holding that warrants can come and buy my shares. Risk associated with equity warrants: if the market price of the equity shares is less than the exercise price during the exercise period, the company may not get the subscription for the shares. Once the exercise period is over, equity warrants are of no use to the company. So once I have a period for the equity warrant, I have some period. After that period, equity warrants are of no use to the company. And if the market price is less, then why should I buy during the exercise period? So that is the question. Now we move on with the next point, where we will talk about deep discount bonds. Deep discount bonds were issued. They were issued in IDBI in 1992 for the first time. The terms on which IDBI issued DDB were as below. The face value was given as 1 lakh rupees, issue price was 2700, and maturity period was 25 years. So the investors will be given the option to quit investment at the end of every 5-year period. So this was a deep discount bond where we have 25 years maturity period. So after every 5 years we give an option to exit. Advantages of deep discount bonds: the company does not require any periodical outflow of funds to service the borrowing during the currency of the borrowing. So the company does not require any periodical outflow of funds. I know that 25 periods is the lock-in period, and I can have this face value of the, suppose the face value of the shares is 1 lakh rupees, issue price is 2700 rupees, and the maturity period is 25 years. So these are the deep discount bonds. Now we move on with the next point, where we'll be talking about what is the risk associated with deep discount bonds. What is the risk? The redemption period is usually very long, 25 years, and hence the investors accept the risk of non-payment at the time of maturity. So there is a risk that there will be a non-payment at the time of maturity. Zero coupon bonds. Let's talk about zero coupon bonds. Zero coupon bonds do not have any explicit or coupon rate of interest payable by the company. Suppose the face value is rupees 100 for zero coupon bond. The redemption value is rupees 125 per zero coupon bond, and the redemption period is 3 years. So difference between the redemption value and the face value is the gain to the investor. So what will be the gain? 25 rupees per zero coupon bond would be the gain to the investor. Now we are talking about the next thing which we'll be talking about would be secured premium notes. Secured premium notes were issued by Tisco in 1992 for the first time. So this was issued, I'll give you an example. This was issued by Tisco in 1992. The terms on which they were given were: face value of the secured premium notes is 300. SPN will not carry any interest during the first 3 years. So the first 3 years there will be no interest on the secured premium notes. Commencing from the 4th year, the investors were to be paid rupees 75 towards the principal and another rupees 75 towards the interest and redemption premium. The investors were given the following 3 options to choose the following mixes: at low interest, high premium, or high interest, low premium. So interest at 37 rupees 50 paisa and redemption at rupees 37 rupees 50 paisa, and interest at rupees 50 and redemption at rupees 25, or interest at rupees 25 and redemption premium at 50. So they were given 3 options where we were thinking about that: low interest, high premium, high interest, low premium. So after the first 3 years there is no interest. After the 4th year, commencing from the 4th year, their investors were to be paid rupees 75. So this was about the secured premium notes. Each secured premium note was attached to the warrant, whereby the investor could buy one equity share for rupees 100 during the exercise period of 1 year to 1.5 years after the allotment of the secured premium notes. So each SPN was attached with the warranty, whereby the investor would buy one equity share for rupees 100. The company does not require any periodical outflow of funds to service the borrowing during the currency of borrowing. So the advantage of this is that once you know you have got an investor, then there is no need for the periodical outflow of funds. Let's now move on with the next point, where we will be talking about the floating rate bonds. In case of floating rate bonds, the rate of interest paid by the company is not fixed. The rate of interest is tied up with some base rate, say bank rate, and the variation in the base rate decides the actual rate of interest payable by the company on the bonds. At the same time, the company may prescribe some rate as the floor rate, indicating the minimum rate of interest payable by the company on the bonds, even if the base rate falls below a certain limit, and the cap rate, which indicates the maximum rate of interest payable by the company even if the base rate increases beyond a certain limit. So there is a cap rate and there is a base rate, floor rate, and a cap rate. So between that rate there would be the interest. The floating rate bonds avoid the risk of interest fluctuations in the economy, both for the issuing company as well as for the investors. So the floating rate bonds avoid the risk of the interest rate fluctuations in the economy, both for the issuing company as well as for the investors. So this was regarding the various kinds of bonds we have. Now let's move on with a little thing where we will be talking more about the capital market. Now when we are talking about the capital market, let's talk about the venture capital. Venture capital has A venture capitalist, okay, who is a venture capitalist? A venture capitalist is investing in a project, is aware of the fact that the project is in the untested area involving more amount of risk. He is also aware that the project are likely to involve larger gestation period. So, as such, a venture capitalist is not worried about the failure of the project in which he invests his funds. Venture capital is a source of funds has become a necessary for the organization who have good growth opportunities. Venture capitalist or venture capital fund is interested in investing these projects, as his investment is likely to generate huge amounts of returns. These returns may not be in the form of recurring returns like dividend, but also in the form of capital gain over a long span of time. So a long span of time, if I think I'm investing in some sector and I'll be getting money from that, I may not be getting money right now, but for a long time I'll be getting money. So that is a venture capitalist. The project is technically feasible. About this, venture capitalists will see that project is technically feasible, commercially viable, and the entrepreneurs are technically competent. The project has a competitive advantage over a long span of time. So there's something new which I'm having. Suppose a newer version between, let's say, something which is between a new kind of mobile or new kind of thing which is going to take over the right now, which will be taking over the laptop and the mobile. So if I have a new device which is coming to the market which can function both and which can have something which is more advanced than our laptops and our mobiles, so this is going to take over and give me more returns in the next few years. So if this is technically possible, and if this is thing which we are looking for with the future of the technology, so I'll be investing in that. And as a venture capitalist, I'll see that my technology is compatible, it is commercially, it can give results, and then after a long span of time I'll get more money. If I may not get money right now, I'll get it within a long span of time. So types of venture capital financing. Projects for venture capital financing are more risky in nature and involve larger gestation period. Suppose my engineers are working on it and they were not able to get, due to some technical defects or technical faults, they were not able to get through what we are looking for. So this will are more risky. So projects are more risky in nature and involve larger gestation period. And venture capitalist is not interested in keeping his investment in the project on a permanent basis. So I don't want it on a permanent basis. I want the thing to be out within 1 year or 2 years, and then after that I want to make money for the next 5 years, maybe next 3, 4, 5 years, or 10 years maximum. I'll make money. This exit routes available for venture capitalists. As stated earlier, the venture capitalist is not interested in remaining associated with the venture capital undertaking on a permanent basis. He is interested in quitting his investment at a suitable point of time. There are two options may be available for venture capitalist for the purpose of quitting his investment. First one is purchase of venture capitalist fund by the promoters and initial public offering. He can give initial public offering. So now this was regarding venture capitalist. And venture capital company or venture capital fund should have been given the certificate of registration by SCBI, and such venture capital company or venture capital fund should also fulfill all the criteria which are specified by SCBI. A venture capitalist company or venture capital fund is set up to raise the funds for investment in the venture capital undertaking, which necessarily means a company whose shares are not listed in the recognized stock exchange. So this was all regarding the venture capital funds and venture capital funding. So now let's move on with the next point, where we'll be more talking about the mutual funds. So let's talk about mutual funds. We'll be deciding about all the terms and about all the funds we have. So right now, for the time being, what we have is mutual funds close-ended, open-ended. Open-ended can be purchased all times. Close-ended have a specific period time, that is about 5 years, or say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So a mutual fund, what is a mutual fund? First of all, a mutual fund is a pool of money which is collected from many investors and is invested by an asset management company to achieve some common objectives of the investors. What are the advantages? It increases the purchasing power of the one person of the investor. Okay, allows participation in the securities market with small investment. With small investment, you can enter the securities market. Enables them to have a well diversified portfolio. Diversification is prescribed by term, that is, we should not play we should not give all the money into one basket. So that is, we should divide our money so that one loses, our money still safe with others. So that is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Reduction of risk, there is less risk involved. Money would be managed by professionals at low cost. And then reduction of transaction cost, liquidity, and convenience and flexibility. What are the disadvantages of mutual fund? No control over cost, no tailor-made portfolio, and managing a portfolio of funds. So friends, whatever I am telling you is just a basic understanding and is just a basic outline of how the mutual fund works, how the debentures work, how the shares work, how the capital market work, and how do we have these venture capitalists, and what are deep bonds, what are discounted bonds. This is just about basic understanding. This will clear your terms about capital market, about the share market, about the share capital. So just getting the basic understanding of all those keywords and all those words, terminologies, and about the understanding of the flow of the capital market. So when we talk about, let's talk about what are open-ended funds and closed-ended funds. What is the difference? An open-ended fund is one that sells and repurchases units at all times. Investors buy into the scheme and redeems from the fund house directly. Subscription at all times is not mandatory. Redemption must be permitted within certain obvious conditions, and the corpus changes every day. Open-ended funds are subject to higher redemption pressure. The scheme calculates NAV on a daily basis. About a closed-ended fund, closed-ended funds have a fixed tenure, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. After the closure of this, no new units of mutual funds are available for sale from the fund house directly. So no new mutual funds will be available after the closure. Next thing is, exit option is available to investors in two ways. That is the exit window and listing on a stock exchange. You can either, if you want to exit, you can list on a stock exchange. Units are repurchased by the fund itself through the intermediate periodic exit window. The fund corpus in such a case can only reduce. The units of listed funds are usually at a discount to its NAV. So the units of the listed funds are traded usually at a discount to its NAV. The unit capital of such a fund remains constant, thus no redemption pressure. So now let's move on with various kinds of funds we have. What is an offer document and what are the various things which we need to take care of in an offer document. Who is a trustee, who is an AMC, and who is basically R&D agent. These are things which we are supposed to know. So now let's talk about the offer document. Offer document contains the details of a scheme that the asset management company prepares on the behalf of trustees and circulates to the prospective investor. Okay, so this is prepared by AMC, asset management company, on behalf of trustees and circulates to the prospective investors. So what would be the content of an offer document? It would contain the details of the sponsor and the AMC, description of the scheme and the investment objective, terms of issues, historical statistics, investors' rights and services, fee structures and expenses, information on income and expenses of existing schemes. The front page of the offer document contains its date of publication, name and type of the fund, and its major objectives. Specifically, the following: the type of scheme, equity, income or balance, name of the mutual fund, name of the scheme, unit price, opening, closing and earliest closing date, name of guarantor if the scheme is an assured return, SCBI disclaimer, and statement to the effect that is important for prospective investor to read and retain for its future reference. So validity of the offer document, I mean this is for basic understanding. I'll talk about the basic terms and the exact dates and times and everything in my next video if I get time. This is for learning about the capital market, just for understanding purpose. So it is for the new scheme 6 months from the date of issued by AMC of the letter containing observations from SCBI. For existing open-ended funds, updated at least every 2 years, and for closed-ended, published only once during the lifetime of the NFO. So I'll get back to you in case there are changes. Investors' right to information on material changes in scheme. Example of such major changes include reconstruction of the AMC, imposing or enhancing of entry or exit load, change in the key personnel of the AMC, especially the fund manager, addition of new plans in the existing scheme, and change in management controlling interest of AMC. So investors' right to information. What is the investors' right to information on material changes? If there is reconstruction of the asset management company, imposing or enhancing of entry or exit load, change in the key personnel of the AMC, especially the fund manager, addition of new plans in the existing scheme. So there are new plans which are being added to a scheme where I have invested. So I have the this is my right to get the information. Change in management controlling interest of the AMC. Other important information regarding OD. Compliance officer, an AMC employee, has to sign the due diligence certificate which says that the information in the OD is according to SCBI formats and information is verified and true and fair representation of the facts. So what are the important information regarding this? Compliance officer should know that this is information is verified, true and fair. Second thing is it is according to the SCBI formats. Next we move on. Now we talk about all constituents of the funds are SCBI registered. Third point. So all things should be SCBI registered. Risk factors, both standard and scheme specific, have to be disclosed. So what are the risk factors? They have to be disclosed. Factors which are common to funds are called as standard risk factors. These include market risk, no assurance of return, etc. So what are the standard risks? Market risk, no returns, no assurance of returns. Sorry, there is no assurance of returns. So factors specific to a scheme are scheme-specific risk factors. In these include restrictions on liquidity, such as locking period, risk of investing in the first scheme of fund, etc. So what is the scheme specific? Scheme has a certain period, which is locking period. So these are there are some restrictions on liquidity and risk of investing in the first scheme of fund. So it's a new scheme. So would you like to invest? So that would be a scheme specific risk factor. Fundamental attributes of scheme include scheme type, objectives. What are the objectives of the scheme? Investment pattern, fees and expenses, liquidity conditions, accounting and valuation, investment restrictions, if any. For any change in fundamental attributes, investors' approval is not needed. Trustees and SCBI would approve the change and investors should be informed. A scheme cannot make any guarantee of return without stating the name and the guarantor and disclosing the rest worth of the guarantor. Information on existing schemes and financial summary of existing schemes to be given for 3 years. So whatever schemes I have been running for the past 3 years, whatever financial transactions and whatever the financial summary of those schemes have to be given. Information on transactions with associate companies to be provided for the past years. Whatever my associate companies, whatever have been our transactions with those companies for the past 3 years. If any expenses incurred is higher than what was stated in the OD for the past schemes, explanation should be given. There is no information on the on other mutual funds, their product or performance in the offer document. Investors' rights are stated in the offer document. So on other mutual funds, I should not disclose what other mutual funds I have, their product or their performance. So when I am concerned with my new mutual fund, new scheme, so I will be talking about that only. The borrowing restrictions on the mutual fund should be disclosed. This includes the purposes and limits on borrowing. 3 years track record of investors, complaints and redressals should be disclosed in the offer document. Any pending cases or penalties against sponsors or asset management companies should be disclosed in the offer document. So what is key information memorandum? So there is something which is called as key information memorandum. Key information memorandum is an abridged version of the offer document. It is distributed with all application forms. In fact, the offer document does not have any application form, but a key information memorandum does. So key information memorandum is also an abridged version of offer document. It is distributed with all application forms, and offer document does not have an application form, but it has a key information memorandum, does have an application form. So this was all regarding the offer document when you're talking about the offer document. Now let's move on with the basic things where we'll be talking more about the mutual funds. Let's talk about the asset management company, the trustees and the fund sponsor. Let's talk about this thing where we have a custodian RMT agent. About that is an AMC, and here we have a trustee, and with that we have a sponsor. So let's talk about the structure. Mutual fund structure. So let's talk about open and closed end funds are constituted along with the unique structure as unit trust. A mutual fund may have several different schemes, open and closed ended under it. Open-ended and closed-ended schemes are governed by the same regulation and the regulatory body, that is SCBI Regulation Act. The fund sponsors. So let's talk about the sponsor. Sponsor is defined under the SCBI regulations as any person who, acting alone or in combination with another body corporate, establishes a mutual fund. So sponsor is the one who establishes a mutual fund. So now sponsor must possess a sound financial track record over 5 years prior to registration. A sound financial track record over 5 years prior to registration. Sponsor could be a bank, a corporate, or a financial institution. It can be a bank, it can be a corporate, or it can be a financial institution. Sponsor of a fund will form a trust and appoint a board of trustees. So what will the sponsor do? Appoint a trust and form a trust and appoint trustees, a board of trustees. The sponsor will also appoint an AMC as fund managers and will also appoint a custodian to hold the fund in accordance with SCBI regulations. So what do I have? I have a sponsor, I have people who are looking for this, and then I have a trustee, and for this SCBI guidelines I have someone who holds this as a custodian. So now let's move on to the next point. The sponsor must make profit in at least 3 out of the previous 5 years, including the last year. So he should have made profit in the last year, and he should have made profit for at least 3 years of the 5 years. Net worth, share capital plus reserves and surplus of the sponsor must be positive. So net worth capital should be positive. To qualify as a sponsor, he must contribute at least 40% of the net worth of the asset management company. So if I am a sponsor, I should at least give 40% of the net worth of the asset management company. So mutual funds as trust. A mutual fund is constituted in the form of public trust created under the Trust Act. Under the Trust Act, our fund has no independent legal capacity itself. So mutual fund does not have an independent legal capacity itself. Trustees. The trustee is an independent body which acts as a protector of the unit holder. So a trustee will be a protector of the unit holder. The next point we move on with, they ensure that the fund is managed by the asset management company as per the defined objectives by the fund sponsor in the favor of the they ensure that the fund is managed by the asset management company as per the defined objectives and in accordance with the trust deed and SCBI regulations. So the trustees would be protector of the unit holder. They will see that their objectives and with accordance with the trust deed and SCBI regulations. The fund is being managed by the asset management company. The trust is created through a document called the trust deed that is executed by the fund sponsor in the favor of trustees. So the trust is created through a document called the trust deed that is executed by the fund sponsor in favor of the trustees. The role of trustees. The role of trustees is to safeguard the interest of the investor, unit holder of the fund, fiduciary capacity. The trustees make sure that the funds are invested according to the investor's mandate and objective. The board of trustees is appointed by the sponsor with SCBI approval, and at least 2/3 of the board of trustees should be independent. Trustees of one mutual fund cannot be a trustee of another mutual fund. Trustees of one mutual fund cannot be an asset management company of another, and vice versa. The board of trustees is required to meet at least 4 times in a year to review the asset management company. Trust created through a document called the trust deed executed by the fund sponsor in favor of the trustees. So what are the rights of trustees? The trustees appoint the asset management company with the prior approval of SCBI. They also approve each of the schemes floated by the asset management company. They have the right to request any necessary information from the AMC concerning the operations of various schemes managed by the asset management company. Trustees have the right to dismiss the asset management company with the approval of SCBI and in accordance with the regulations. The trustees have the rights to ensure that based on the quarterly review of the AMC's net worth, any shortfall in the net worth is made up by the AMC. So if there is any shortfall, so the trustees' right is that they should see that whatever shortfall is in the net worth is there, it is being made up by the AMC. Obligations of trustees. The trustees must enter into the investment management agreement with the AMC according to the fourth schedule of SCBI regulations. They must ensure that the funds transactions are in accordance with the trust deed. The trustees are responsible for ensuring that the AMC has proper system and procedures in place and has appointed key personnel including fund managers and a compliance officer besides the other constituents such as auditors and registrars. So what are the obligations of trustees? They should are responsible for ensuring that the AMC, the asset management company, has a proper system. They have a proper key personnel for fund manager. They have a compliance officer to take care of the SCBI guidelines. They have besides other things such as auditors and registrars. The trustees must ensure due diligence on the part of AMC for the empanelment of brokers. The trustees must furnish to SCBI on a half-yearly basis. So what is next point is what is an AMC and what is a custodian. These are the two important things which we need to know. Custodian, appointed by the Board of Trustees for safekeeping in case of physical securities or participating in any clearing system through the approved depository companies on behalf of mutual fund in the case of demat securities. So the custodian should be an entity independent of the sponsor and is required to be registered with SCBI. Custodian functions as investment back office of a mutual fund. So they are a back office of a mutual fund, appointed by the Board of Trustees for safekeeping or participating in any clearing system on behalf of mutual fund. So what are bankers? Bankers are appointed for holding bank accounts and providing remittance services. Registrar and transfer agents. So what are registrar and transfer agents? They are responsible for issuing and redeeming units of mutual fund and providing other related services such as preparation of transfer documents and updating records. So registrar and transfer agents are for updating records. So this is what I have, RNT agents in this. So RNT agent will, what will the RNT agent do? RNT agent will do issuing and redeeming the units of mutual fund and providing other related services such as preparation of transfer documents and updating records. So now let's move on with another point where we're talking about the AMC, the asset management company, is created by the capital contributed by the sponsor. The asset management company is appointed as fund manager of a mutual fund by the trustees. The net worth of the asset management company is around 10 crores at all times. Minimum half of the directors must be independent. AMC of one fund cannot be a trustee of another. An AMC of one fund can do only advisory business with other funds, domestic as well as offshore. So this was all regarding the AMC, trustees, custodian, RNT agents and sponsors. So sponsors should have the capital for introducing the mutual funds. Their record should be clear. 3 years should be profit out of the 5 years. Last year should be a profit. Then the next thing we saw about the fund sponsor. Then we saw about the trustees to safeguard the investor and the unit holders. And then we saw about their rights. Then we saw about the asset management company, which is created by its capital contributed by the sponsor. Then we saw about the custodian and we saw about the trustees. So these were the role which they each everyone plays. So now when we are talking about things, let's talk about a few more things about funds. A few definitions about funds and then we will be off with this introduction to mutual funds. So what is a debt fund? What is a equity fund? What is a liquid and balanced hybrid fund? So what are these funds? Debt funds or income funds. So let's talk about debt funds and income funds. A fund can be classified as debt fund which invests primarily in debts, that is loan securities. Debt fund can be further classified as gilt funds, diversified funds, income funds, diversified debt funds, focused debt funds, high yield debt funds, assured return funds and fixed term PAN funds. So what is it? Gilt funds, diversified funds, income funds, diversified debt fund, focused debt fund, high yield debt fund, assured return fund and fixed term PAN funds. So what is gilt funds? Gilt funds are invest primarily in government securities or gilts, government borrowing program. Diversified funds invest in various varieties of debt securities. Let's say government securities, corporate securities, securities of different maturities. Income fund invests in debt securities so as to provide regular income to investors. So this is income fund is to provide regular income to the investors. Diversified debt fund, a fund that invests in all types of debt securities issued by entities across all industries and sectors. So diversified debt fund is, it includes every sector, many sectors, okay, and across all industries and sectors. Focused debt fund is invest only in specified securities and thus have a higher risk than diversified debt fund. So when I am focusing only on a fixed specific type of securities, I am at a higher risk. High yield debt funds seek to obtain high interest return rates by investing in debt instruments that are considered below investment grade. So when you are getting high interest rates, interest returns by investing in debt instruments that are considered below investment grade. Assured return fund, so it's being offered by erstwhile UTI and now no longer offered. So these were being offered. Assured return funds were offered by UTI but now no longer offered. Fixed term plan funds, essentially closed end in nature and usually for terms less than a year. So fixed term plan is less than a year. Being of shorter duration, they are not listed on stock exchange. Invest in such securities whose residual maturity is equal to the scheme tenure. So now we move on to the next point where we're talking about equity funds. A fund that invests primarily in equity ownership instruments. Equity funds can be further classified as diversified equity funds, investing in a mix of equity from different sectors. Index fund, portfolio replicates a selected index. So a portfolio replicates a selected index. So this is index fund. Sectoral fund invests only in equity instruments of one sector, that is technology, either you're investing in technology or pharma or you're investing in banking. Aggressive growth fund target maximum capital appreciation, invest in less researched or speculative shares. What is a growth fund? This fund invests in equities of growth companies only, the companies which have a potential to grow at a higher rate in future. So let's talk about large cap, mid cap, small cap fund. These funds invest in equities of large, mid, small cap companies respectively. Specialty or thematic funds have a very narrow portfolio orientation and invest in companies that meet a predefined criteria, that is infrastructure fund or Asian fund. Equity linked savings scheme, ELSS so called. So what is it? It's an investment in these schemes entitled the investor and income tax deduction under section 80C, that is maximum 1 lakh rupees, so it was a few years back. These are open-ended funds, but investment in such schemes, including the reinvestment dividend, gets locked in for a period of 3 years. So these are open-ended funds, ELSS, equity linked savings scheme, but investment in these schemes gets locked in for a period of 3 years. Value fund, what is a value fund? Try to seek out fundamentally sound companies whose shares are currently underpriced in the market. So let's try to seek out some sound companies which are very sound, which have a good record, but now their shares are underpriced. These funds add those shares to their portfolio. So what will this value fund do? Add those shares to their portfolio that are selling at low price earning ratios, low market to book value ratios, and are believed to be undervalued to their true potential. So these are undervalued shares which have been added to the value fund. Equity income or dividend yield funds invest in stocks which have a high dividend yield, that is dividend to market price ratio. Balance funds, let's talk about balance funds. These funds invest both in equity and debt instrument in varying proportions. Some have a higher proportion of equity while others have a high proportion of debt. Let's talk more about growth and income funds. Unlike income focused or growth focused funds, these funds seek to strike a balance between capital appreciation and income for the investor. These funds would be less risky than pure growth funds, though more risky than income funds. So growth and income funds are these funds seek to strike a balance between the capital appreciation and income for the investor. So they look for both things. Investors should get an income and there should also be a capital appreciation. So capital should increase and investors should get a return. as an income. So these funds would be less risky than pure growth funds, though more risky than income funds. So income funds, these funds are more risky than income funds because income funds will guarantee me income. And when I am looking for capital appreciation, so I will be looking for something more risk, but less risky than pure growth funds where I will not be looking for income, I will be looking for capital appreciation. So asset location funds, where the fund manager has the flexibility to change the location of the funds between equity and debt as per own perceptions about the direction of the market. So what is an asset allocation fund? Where the fund manager has the flexibility to change the allocation of funds between the equity and debt as per own perceptions and about direction of the market. So this is an asset allocation fund. Commodity funds specialize in investing different commodities directly or through shares of commodity companies or through commodity for future contracts. A most common example of commodity fund is the precious metal funds. As of date, Indian metal funds does not have any commodity funds except the ones that invest in gold. Next thing is real estate funds. Would invest in real estate directly or may fund real estate developers or lend to them or buy shares of housing finance companies. As of the date, there are no real estate mutual funds in the country. SCBI guidelines are awaited. Exchange traded funds, it tracks a market index and trades like a single stock or on the stock exchange. It is a unique category of open-ended index which gets listed on the stock market. It combines the features of open-ended as well as closed-ended schemes. So exchange traded funds, a very interesting thing. It has features of open-ended as well as the closed-ended schemes. It tracks a market index and trades like a single stock on the stock exchange. It is a unique category of open-ended index funds which get listed on the stock market. So let's now move on to the next point: fund of funds, liquid fund, and load and no load funds. Fund of funds, where we have fund of funds invest in a portfolio of units of other mutual fund schemes. Fund of funds will invest in a portfolio of units of other mutual fund schemes also. So load and no loads funds that charge front end entry or back end exit or deferred contingent deferred sales charge CDSC loads are called load funds. Funds that make up no such charges are called as no load funds. So funds which will be charging entry fee, front end entry and then back end exit or deferred contingent deferred sales charge would be giving load funds. In India, SCBI has defined a load as the one-time fee payable by the investors to allow the fund to meet initial issue expenses including broker's commission, advertising and marketing expenses, etc. As per the SCBI definition, only those funds that charge an entry load are considered as load funds. Now let's move on with the last topic of the day: liquid funds, money market and mutual funds. Liquid fund or money market. These funds are actually debt funds which invest in money markets and called money market debt securities, that is T-bills, commercial papers and certification of deposits. These funds have very little interest rate risk and are considered safer than even gilt or other debt funds. So this was all regarding the introduction to mutual funds. We saw about the capital venture capitalization, we saw about the debentures, we saw about the basic understanding of how the company law works, how the market works, what is the capital market, what is the shares, which are the shares, preference shares, the equity shares, what are the various kinds of debentures, registered, unregistered, secured, then redeemable debentures, then naked debentures. We saw about the equity warrants, we saw about secured premium notes, we saw about deep discount bonds. All those things we saw about regarding the special kinds of special features of the financial market. So this was all regarding the share capital. Now let's move on with the next video where we'll be talking more about the mutual funds. In this video we spoke about the types of mutual funds, we spoke about the offer document, we spoke about R&D agent plays, the various roles which custodian plays, various roles which asset manager company plays, and trustees play. So this was all which we saw in this video of mutual funds and debentures and venture capitalization. So hopefully you love this video. This is Dr. Roy signing off from Rohit Productions, and watch out for my video where I'll be talking more about the investment plans for the mutual funds, where we'll be having a basic understanding of how to invest your money into mutual funds for short term. So this is Dr. Roy signing off from Rohit Productions, and hope you all have a great day. And thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and thanks a lot.